1. So this actually happened to me today, and it felt like something I should share, as a caution to others. I live in a small city not too far from Edmonton, and recently, there has been a series of armed robberies happening in and around the area. It's made me wary about walking alone at night, so I have found myself home at night more often than usual. It's not the worst, but I dislike having this feeling of unease. But I managed to make do. So today my dad and his girlfriend were invited out to a party, meaning I had the whole house to myself. I pretty much had the evening planned out. Watch some episodes of my favorite soap opera, then switch it over to some classic horror films. So I said bye to them as I left and quickly loaded up the TV. It was not long after I had started up the horror movie that I heard a knock at the door. It wasn't a regular knocking. If my TV had been any louder, I probably wouldn't have been able to hear it. Thinking it was nothing at first, I went over to the door without pausing the movie just to confirm. But, to my surprise, there was someone at the door. I opened the door, and there stood a slim man. Looked to be in his mid-30s, and that's all I can pretty much say. I'm not the best when it comes to describing people, and I didn't really go out of my way to analyze him at that moment. I couldn't even tell you if his jacket was grey or black. The man said he represented a security company and was going around my area to offer his company's services. He asked if the owner of the house was home, to which I told him no, and he would not be home until late. He then began giving me some quick information about his company, that it was the only one that was locally funded, that it's already being used in several homes in my street, and that it's smart device friendly. He even showed me a laminated piece of paper that displayed all the different devices that could work with the security system. I told him that we weren't interested in having a security system at this time. He proceeded to ask me if my family leaves the house for long trips, which would be a great reason to get this security system. Looking back now, this was a huge red flag. But I answered honestly that the house was almost never empty and that we never really went on trips. I also added that he could speak to my dad tomorrow if he was coming back. He told me his team would be leaving to another city tomorrow, thanked me for my time, then left. I went back to my movie and pretty much forgot about the visitor. Movie finishes, and I decide to check my Facebook to glance at the buy and sells. Near the top of my feed is a shared post that caught my eye immediately. What I read next made me completely freeze up. It was from a woman who had also talked to a representative from the exact same security company I had been advertised. This guy knocked on her door softly too, which immediately caught my attention. She noted how the guy never gave his name or business card, something I didn't even realize happened for me until I thought back. Overall, she was very suspicious of the guy, so she asked he wait outside, and she got some pen and paper to write down his phone number. When she returned, he was gone. The next-door neighbor told her that they saw the man running down the road and into an alley. But the biggest fact this woman dropped: she confronted the security company, it does actually exist, and they told her that they didn't send anyone out to this city to go door to door. This shared post is blowing up, and it seems that it occurred to a lot more people than just me. Some people even showed video from their security cameras of these employees. There's definitely more than one person pretending to work for this company, one even being a woman, and a lot of strange activity being reported. One person going into the backyard without permission, another person standing in front of the house like they're scoping it out. Knowing all of this now, it makes the entire encounter with that guy at my door terrifying. Was he scoping my house too? Would he have tried something if I didn't answer? I also wonder, was he hesitant to try anything because I didn't pause my movie? For all he knew, I could have had a friend over. Luckily, nothing serious happened for the rest of the night, but I will be extremely cautious from now on. If there's one thing I would advise, be suspicious of anyone you don't know that comes to your house. Just because someone says they work for a company doesn't make it true. You don't know who they are, or what they might actually want from you. 2. What you guys need to know. I am a very, very touchy-feely, sweet type of person, and I would always hold hands with my friends, lay my head on their shoulders, and would give them warm hugs. There's no malice whatsoever because that's how affectionate I am. Okay, now with the story. This happened during the first major school contest the school played during our sophomore year in high school. I was assigned as the head of props committee, and I was given the liberty to choose classmates I wanted to be in the props committee too. Of course, I chose CS and L to be in the props, because I know guys like them wouldn't want to be a part of the play. Like I said, I am a very sweet and affectionate person, and I felt pity that not many of my classmates were talking to CS because he was the odd one out, the class outcast, and it was only L who was talking to him because they're seatmates, but that's it. So I approached him and befriended him to make him feel less lonely. You know, what a good person would do. And along the span of making props, C and I got close. Worst thing to have happened, sadly. So one day after classes were done, I stayed a bit later than usual, because I was making sure our rival section wasn't going to sabotage our props. Typical high school rivalry, what do you expect? It was already 6 in the evening when I left the building, and I was walking to the bus stop. I felt someone walking behind me, so I turned around, and along the crowds of college students, there was CS, leaning on a pole while looking at his phone. This caught me off guard because he usually leaves the campus on the east gate, not the main gate where I always go. But I just let it slide, and thought maybe he was waiting for L or just hanging around. We have this open area in the campus which is like a park before you reach the main gate. The next day during lunch, I guess I left my bag unzipped because when I got back from the cafeteria, there was a brown paper bag inside which I know I didn't bring. Picking it up, there was a Hershey's chocolate bar inside it, and a small note taped on it that says, "You look so pretty today, Alpaca." I really didn't mind the letter because the only thing in my mind is that I got a chocolate bar. Nonetheless, I showed the note to my best friend and L. Both of them had different reactions. My best friend, being the hopeless romantic she is, was beyond happy that I have a secret admirer. L, on the other hand, was, for lack of a better word, irked. It happened again the next day, next week, next 2 weeks, with the messages becoming longer. "Your smile is so cute and you're, yes, illiterate, so beautiful. You have a cute laugh and I really like you." That kind of stuff. One day, for some reason, the faculty had an emergency meeting, so that meant an hour without class, and we were talking. Some had their phones out, and my seatmate was sleeping. I was busy doing calligraphy on my journal when I saw a flash of light in my peripheral vision. I looked at the direction where it came from, and I saw CS fiddling at his phone or tablet, which was undoubtedly angled at me. Again, I let this slide. That's when L walked by and slipped a paper in my lap saying, "Look at your phone." So I took my phone from my bag, turned it on, and L sent a message. "I have something to tell you later. Be online." That night at home, I was waiting for L to go online, and when he was, his first message was to avoid CS and stop talking to him. I asked why, and he sent pictures of a phone, a gallery to be exact. And I noticed one album with the title Alpaca. The next photo L sent was the contents of the album. It was pictures of me, pictures from my Facebook, pictures during class, stolen pictures, and some pictures were obviously zoomed in or cropped, so that it was only my face in the picture. Obviously, I got creeped out, and asked L whose phone that was, and lo and behold, it was from CS's phone. L further then told me the paper bag and the Hershey's and the messages were from CS. He knew from the start because of the handwriting, and I got creeped out more. L told me to be safe and to start avoiding CS from now on, and I did. The next few days I gave the paper bag to L without getting the Hershey's, and I think CS was slowly noticing that I was avoiding him. This is where the shit hits the fan. Another day of me leaving school at 6 p.m. because of a school seminar, as usual, I was walking to the main gate when I noticed there weren't many students out for some reason, which made the walkway less crowded. The next thing I knew, I felt someone behind me, and there was CS, failing to hide behind a big bush. My red flag was waving, so I called L and told him that CS is behind me and hiding behind a bush. L frantically told me to walk fast towards the bus stop and stay on the line with him. I tried my best to calm my nerves and walk fast. I would simply look over my shoulder, and I could see CS keeping up and almost 100 feet near me. and I think Elle picked it up from how I gasped and he told me to run. I ran towards the main gate and to the overpass and hid behind a stall selling street food by the sidewalk. A few minutes later I saw CS by the bus stop looking around, and was low-key checking if the students by the bus stop wearing our school uniform was me. I was still on the phone call with Elle and I told him CS was looking for me by the bus stop. Fortunately CS left and I went back to the overpass, but Elle told me I should go to the bus stop on the next block just to make sure. I got home safely. The following weeks consisted of me avoiding CS like the plague, but I felt his stare at the back of my head whenever I look around the classroom and get a glimpse of him. He would have this straight stare and it really freaked me out. Elle was kind enough to accompany me by the bus stop, and sometimes he would distract CS whenever classes were dismissed. The final straw was when CS shoved an envelope inside my bag, and it was 3 yellow pad papers. I didn't get to read it because Elle took it from me, and he read it instead. After reading it, he tore the papers and threw it. I asked him what the letter was about, and he told me CS thought I loved him because I befriended him, and that we were in a relationship and was confused why I was avoiding him. He goes on and on that he loves me and that we were the perfect couple, and I was dumbfounded. I backtracked on how I befriended him and how I approached him, and I wondered if I let him on, but I know I didn't. I was just being myself. Push comes to shove, and I told CS that I didn't love him, nor were we ever in a relationship. The rest of the school year went smooth except for the times CS and I were in a group or a project or activity, but I made sure to keep the conversation short and quick. 3. Before I start, here is some backstory. I was 16 at the time, and I had just gotten my driver's license. I was able to drive on my own until 11 p.m. I didn't have a car at the time, so I was using my mom's car. I also had a membership to a local Planet Fitness during this time, so I would go and work out a few times a week after I got off of school. Alright, now on to the story. One night I decided to wait and do all of my homework at 8 p.m. So when I was done, it was already 9. I wanted to go to the gym, since I had nothing else really to do, and I hadn't gone in a while, since I was particularly busy that week. My parents let me go, but I had to be back at least before 10:30 p.m. I hop in my mom's car and make the 5-minute drive to the gym. I had a good workout and left around 10. On the way home, I almost hit a guy who was going 10 miles below the speed limit. I switched lanes to get around him, but as I pulled in front of him, he accelerated and laid on his horn. He drove over to the side of me and started yelling at me through the window. I ignored him, since I didn't want to start a road rage incident. Thankfully, unlike most horror stories, he didn't follow me home. When I pulled into my driveway, I pulled under the carport to my house, as that was where she always parked her car. I turned off the car and stepped out. Just as I closed the driver's side door and was walking to my front door, I heard someone call out from behind me. "Hey, excuse me." I turned to see a man standing about 5 feet in front of me. He appeared to be about 30 or so, with a shaved head and a thin mustache and beard. He was about my height, so around 5'8", and had a stocky build. He was wearing a light-colored muscle shirt and cargo pants. Even without much light, since my front light was off, there was enough moonlight to make out his appearance. I was immediately on high alert. 1, it is 10 p.m., and 2, this dude had to have been standing near my driveway or hiding around it, since I saw no one in headlights pulling into my driveway. Nevertheless, I decided to play it cool and answer him. "Yeah, can I help you?" I asked him calmly. "Hey, I was wondering if you could give me directions to the gasoline service place," he asked in response. Side note, gasoline service place? Never heard of that phrase to describe a gas station before. Okay, I responded. I was keeping my eye on him, making sure he didn't pull any sudden moves. His hands weren't in his pockets, so I could at least tell he wasn't holding a weapon. I also kept my ears open to any footsteps I heard, as this guy could have had a buddy hiding in the shadows waiting for the perfect opportunity to attack me from behind. I proceeded to give him directions to 2 gas stations near my house, both of which were about a 1/4 mile or so away. He seemed to have a lot of trouble understanding the directions, to which he explained that it was because he was from New York and was in my town visiting a friend of his. He then proceeded to ask me where the Mason Lodge was around here. I still have no clue what he was referring to. It wasn't a name of a motel or inn nearby, and a search on Google showed nothing in my area. I was starting to buy this guy less and less. He seemed sincere, but the fact that he came out of nowhere to ask for directions in the middle of the night, in a suburban neighborhood, was suspicious to say the least. Plus, as I mentioned before, I hadn't seen him in the beam of my mom's car's headlights at all when I was driving down the street and turning into my driveway. That meant he had lightning-fast walking speed with the quickest footsteps I'd ever heard, or he was hiding nearby, and I caught him and he was trying to act lost to appear credible. After talking to this guy for what felt like 10 minutes, he smiled, told me, "God bless you, man," shook my hand, then turned around and began walking down my driveway. This is where things get even creepier. Me, thinking the whole ordeal was over, turned around and took 2 steps toward my front door. However, I immediately panicked as I realized that by turning around I had made myself vulnerable to attack from behind. I turned my head toward the direction where the man had begun walking to, only to find him completely gone. I looked around, but he was nowhere to be seen. I had turned around for only a few seconds, and in that time he had completely disappeared. This would be impossible for a couple of reasons. One, I live on a pretty long street in my neighborhood. The house is near the middle of that street, so there is one street that cuts through my street pretty much in the middle and makes a 4-way intersection. This is located about 5 houses down from me. But even if he had ran with the speed of Usain Bolt, he wouldn't have reached that intersection in the span of 5 seconds. 2, he made no sound whatsoever. Now, this could be related to the fact that I had not heard him walking up to me when I originally pulled into my driveway. However, there were no noises at all, not a single sound could be heard. So unless this guy moved around without making a peep, he would have been heard by me. I freaked out and sprinted to my door, unlocked it, and ran inside. I then slammed the door and locked it. I sat there, catching my breath, trying to rationalize on what just happened. Thankfully, my house wasn't broken into that night, and nothing ever happened. I told my parents the next day, and while they were worried, they told me that we were probably okay, considering that we live in a pretty safe neighborhood. Heck, the sheriff lives down the street from me. But thinking back on it now, I still have so many questions. I would love to know where that guy could have been hiding, or how he was able to disappear into thin air in under 5 seconds. I looked up and down the street several times, and not a single person was outside. To this day, I'm convinced this guy was just hiding around the corner from me, waiting for me to go inside. That can be the only likely scenario. I have never gone to the gym that late at night anymore, and whenever I do arrive home late at night, from work, party, etc., I always rush inside. This man could have been genuinely lost, and I was a good Samaritan helping a stranger. Or he could have been a potential burglar, criminal, etc., who I caught before he was able to plan his attack. But to the man who was in my driveway, if you were in fact a lost guy out in my neighborhood, try and get help before it's too dark so you don't scare anybody. But if you had any malicious intentions, then let's not meet again. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 397. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, today I had a trip to the dermatologist in the local hospital as a checkup, because my skin's pretty bad right now, and they want to start me on some sort of tar treatment thing. It sounds like it could go on for about 10 weeks, maybe more. Not looking forward to it, but I will try anything if it helps my skin. So it looks like I'll have to go down tomorrow. They'll test it on my skin to see if there's a reaction. Rather see if there isn't a reaction, like a bad reaction. And if there isn't, then I'll be every 3 days they increase the dosage of that. So not looking forward to it because it's tar. It stinks. I will not be leaving the house while this is happening, except when I have to go down to get the treatment adjusted. but hopefully it helps. I think the only other options after that are UV treatment again, maybe UVA over UVB. But I had that once, and the thing is, I know for a fact that definitely works. But you can only have so much of it, and there is a risk of bad things happening to your skin. And while it does work, it doesn't work for long. I enjoyed a good few months the last time. Was it 2018? I finished the treatment, so I enjoyed a good few months there. Then towards the end of the year, it started coming back. Grumble, 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 grumble. Well, anyway, I'll try this and see what it does. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.